You're listening to Dramas Over Flowers with Saya, Anissa, and Porama. Hey, Anissa here. This is part 2 of our conversation about celebrity, authenticity, and Korean variety. If you missed part 1, go back and listen so you can hear all about how Saya and Porama fell accidentally sideways into the BTS fandom. Also, be aware that in this episode we talk about specific scenes from Youth MT, so you may want to watch at least a few episodes before you listen to avoid being spoiled. And also because it's just so good. Kim Yoo-jung, Park Bo-gum, Hwang In-yup, and Ji Chang-wook on a vacation together. What are you waiting for? Okay, enjoy the conversation.
We are now on to talking about how celebrities need vacations, because the show that Saya pulled me into even before the whole BTS wormhole is In the Soup, Friendcation. And Anissa watched that one too.
Yeah, Saya got us onto this with her blog post about how much she loved it. Tell us, Saya, about like how you started watching that, because I don't remember what your like path to watching that was.
Mainly it just
Warang! It was Warang.
stuff that was airing. And I saw the cast and I was like, oh, I mean, it had Park Hyung-sik. It had Park... so here's the thing. I don't love Park Seo-joon, but I do love Hwarang. I mean, I didn't love Park Seo-joon. So
Yeah, right.
Neither
did I before the show.
I know.
I loved him, and then I fell out of love with him because of like a couple of his recent roles. Like I didn't dislike him, but I was just like, you keep doing the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm just not
I mean, that's
really...
exactly the thing. It's like I had loved him in a couple of dramas, and then he went and did a string of like unimpressive roles, and you're just like, I'm not in that. I'm not excited about your projects. So you're just a guy who does dramas. But then like, so there were all of these names of like people I knew. I mean, there's the cast of In the Soup, Friendcation is like 5 people. It's V from BTS. It's Park Hyung-sik. It's Park Seo-joon. It is Chae-sik, and rounding out their sort of friendship group, which I realized afterwards was a thing that I didn't know this when I started watching it, but like Uga Squad is an artist called Peak Boy, who is actually Park Seo-joon's childhood friend from, they went to middle school together, and he's a musician, and like they are an actual real life close friends group. And so I started watching this, and it was a time when I was not feeling great. I was kind of down, and it just was such a gentle show. And I watched an episode and I just felt so healed by it. It was like, this was what I needed. And it's a very introspective show. And because, see, this, like, the beauty of this group of friends, I guess, is that they're all doing different things. So they're not, for example, the way that BTS are like one group doing one thing in the same space. These are 5 different people who are doing 5 different things, even when they're working in the same field. And they're not all working in the same field. Some of them are musicians, some of them are actors, some of them crossover. And then you have like, they're at different stages in their careers as well. And so you have all of these interesting dynamics between, for example, like real life age. You have the Hyungs and the Maknaes, like, you know, the single baby Taeyoung. I'm just making rabbit expressions at the camera that nobody can see except you guys. And then you have like the difference in experience within like their career lives as well. And so all of these things kind of create such interesting conversations. And that's the sort of bonus in addition to their own personal chemistry, which is just like how much they care about each other is so evident in the way that they talk to each other, the way that they treat each other. And like, I don't know, there's just something very appealing about, you know, men, young and youngish, just doing things together at their own rhythm. And especially there's like this kind of, what is it? Like the emotional intelligence that it's just still unusual to me to see that kind of vulnerable relationship between men And I don't know, it's just so nice. I just felt so healed by it. And there were the things they were talking about were things that I really sort of understood in a very personal way, especially when they were talking about stuff like, you know, their careers, when they were talking about, there's this great part in episode 3, which I did force Anissa to watch, where they like all sit down and they watch Cho Shik's drama, Our Beloved Summer. They just sat down to watch it together. And I just thought it was so nice the way that they could sit down and one, like they watched it and appreciated it and they told him how great he was, but not in a, oh, you know, well done, generic kind of way, but in a way that felt very meaningful because like they're people who understand the process. The things that they were talking about were things that like a viewer wouldn't understand or know. And then the things that they shared with each other about how they worked roles, or like Park Seo-joon especially, man, he's just like such a good Hyung. And then he turned up in Youth MT and I'm just like, oh, I'm so happy you're in this. Okay, so I will pause here and I'll let you guys take over.
So I did watch 3 episodes of In the Soup. I haven't watched the last one. I wasn't sure if I would. I just have been in a really like, not just a drama slump, but like a TV slump in general. I just find it so hard to watch anything these days. I don't know if it's because like real life is so taxing and busy and exhausting that like I can only handle like visual input only or audio input only. So I find myself either like listening to podcasts or reading to unwind. And like TV is like too much. Yeah. I don't know. But I have been feeling sick for the last few days. And so I think I've mentioned this.
You don't have to apologize for not feeling the same way about it as I do. Just putting that out there.
Okay. I wasn't planning to, but thanks for giving me permission. But I've mentioned this in the past, and this is why I was smiling when you were saying it was like a healing experience, because I find that variety is what I want to watch when I'm feeling down or feeling sick. Like I don't want to have to emotionally and intellectually engage my mind with a whole drama that is like, you know, like there's conflict and there's tension and there's like plot that you have to keep track of when you're like not feeling good and you have a cold or you're just like having a crappy day. Like it's nice to just watch one episode of a variety show where like, I don't know, everything is fed to you in a really satisfying way.
All of them get dumped into water or something.
Yeah, it's very, and you know, like to what you were saying, Saya, about seeing them be emotionally vulnerable, I thought it was really interesting how, I think it was Cheo-shik who was saying like being able to cry when you're acting or like to cry about he was saying like when he was filming Our Beloved Summer, like he didn't cry that much in the show, but he cried a lot while he was filming it. And he was talking about how like being able to cry through the roles that he plays as an actor is really cathartic because he doesn't cry in his regular life. And they were all like, yeah, that's really true. And I was thinking that's interesting because it's like Korean men are also, you know, in this like masculine culture that doesn't really give them permission to cry in the way that like most men in most cultures are not really given permission to cry, right? But this medium that they do their work in allows them to do that without judgment. And in fact, often they get praised for it because it shows their skill. And he was talking about it as a kind of catharsis. And I just thought that was really interesting because it's a catharsis for the viewer as well. But they were saying like, you don't cry too much. Like Park Seo-joon was saying like, you don't want to cry so much that you become burdensome to the viewer. You want to cry just enough so that the viewer is the one crying. And I was like, wow, that's
deep.
Very smart.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I really enjoyed that conversation because it's such a peek behind the curtain. Yeah. And that's kind of like my favorite things. I remember when I was watching Roommate back a few years ago. And so Roommate it wasn't very popular, but it had a lot of cast members that I really liked. It wasn't really very good. Yeah. I'll be honest. It was kind of boring.
2 episodes
But there is one part where, oh my God, the Reaper. What's his name?
Yeah, Lee Dong-wook. I think he was the reason I watched it.
Yeah. So he was talking to one of the much younger actors who's kind of like at the beginning of his career. I can't remember his name, but I think he was like an idol and also an actor. And he was like asking him for advice. Or like, I don't even know if he was asking him for advice, but Lee Dong-wook actually in a very vulnerable moment kind of shared that like he's struggled to kind of be authentic on screen. And I might be misquoting it because it's been a long time, but he really showed his like vulnerability in terms of like his insecurities about his own acting. And like, I was thinking, yeah, you know, like we've kind of been criticizing him for certain things. And it's like, you forget that this person they know, like whatever, you know, flaws they have in their acting or whatever, like they struggle with to bring to the screen. They already know that. And I was like, oh, wow. But I was also like really happy for him because after that, he did some really amazing, like he did Goblin after that. He did shows where like you could really see his acting improve and progress and develop. And so like it does enrich the experience for you, right? Because you're like even more invested in this person's journey. So that's kind of my favorite thing about getting to see these people in their downtime, I guess.
The interesting thing about Friendcation as a whole, the fact that these 5 are real life friends, is that I slowly realized over the last few years how isolated actors are, and that it's rare for actors to have actor friends. My frame of reference is mostly, Indian cinema, and how isolated people are in Hindi cinema world, like Bollywood, in that their closest friends and acquaintances all come from the crew around them. Their family and friends, the producers they're working with, the writers they're working, these are the people that they are mostly friends with. So actors tend to become very isolated in their craft, and there isn't much exchange like the ones that we saw in Friendcation. And also, I've heard actors say in various interviews across industries that it's hard for actors to be friends with actors because there is that element of competition. Oh, your movie did well. Oh, your drama did well. Mine didn't. That feeling of jealousy and insecurity. And like, because they always go up and down at different times of their career. And it's always horrible to have like your career go down, whereas your friend group might be doing really well. So that's especially emphasized in the, in that.
And they go really deep. In Friendcation, they go really deep. And it's just so, like, Cheo-shik, for example, like, I think he was the one who I felt the most for because he, like, it was clear, like, his insecurities came out really clearly. But at the same time, you're like, but we know him as a really good actor.
But they're also very honest about it. The fact that not all of their careers developed at the same pace.
Yeah, like what Peak Boy was saying to Park, they've been friends since middle school. And like Park Seo-joon also as someone who actually came into that life and into fame later in life. So there's so many interesting layers to how that world exists for people. For example, if you think of someone like Taeyoung V or Park Hyung-sik, who, both have lived the idol life. And for both of them, Taeyoung in particular, that trainee life began when he was in his mid to early teens. And
I think he was 15, right? When he entered
something like that.
Jin was 20 when he became a member, but I think
20 Korean age, I think. He must have been like 19 or something.
Yeah, probably.
Age. Yeah. But like the way that each of them actually have really different experiences and how perhaps like not growing up famous gives you, it definitely gives you different tools to be able to manage that fame. But also having managed that fame, for example, the way that Taeyoung does at such an early age also gives you another kind of, like you're managing the same kind of thing, but perhaps in different ways. But there's something that each of them gains from each other. Like, for example, with Taeyoung, he thrives, under the wings of Hyungs. That is like what he needs in his life, and you can really see it. But then you have someone like Park Seo-joon, who is just like, he thrives in a caretaking role.
And he's a total papa bear.
He really is. And like you can, like if you go back to Hwarang, for example, where he was the Hyung of that whole, that group of like 6 or 7 boys, I can't remember all of their names. And they talk about what it's like to take on those roles, but like not everyone takes those roles on well. And it's just so, it's interesting and heartwarming, and like I can't get enough of it.
I wanted to mention, if you haven't already watched it, the One Night in 2 Days, I think it's maybe 2 episodes where the Hwarang guys come.
Oh, I did watch it. Of course I've watched it.
You did watch it. Yeah, okay. Okay. I just wanted to mention
but
it.
I will probably go and watch it again.
The interesting thing also about liking Park Seo-joon in Friendcation, or learning to like Park Seo-joon in Friendcation for me, I have liked Park Seo-joon since Fight My Way and What's Wrong with Secretary Kim. I've liked him. I have genuinely liked him. I didn't quite like him in Hwarang, but I liked him otherwise. But in Friendcation, seeing his conversation with just there is this early on, I think towards the end of the first episode, they have this stopover on the way to the vacation house where they are at this place where they're taking a break and they're having lunch. And they're just having this very normal conversation that you have over food you just ordered, how to order food, are you reading the menu right? And it's just very simple conversation, but I liked these people as people because of how normal this conversation was. And I started getting their tone. Like I started getting like the sur of the person from that moment on. And then, as you said, like later on in the next couple of episodes, you see how much of a caretaker Park Seo-joon is. And because you realize what an introvert this guy is in this show, when you go on to watch something like Youth Empty, which we are watching right now, 4 episodes have aired and we can't wait for episode 5. Why is it 1 episode a week?
I hate waiting like 7 whole days and then all you get is 1 hour and then it's over in an hour and you're just like,
it's such a quick
the
hour.
whole cycle starts again. I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's awful. They should give us at least 2 episodes. Why? So it's...
Yeah, we're spoiled by drama. The variety is only 1 episode a week.
Right? And then I swear it's not even 60 minutes. We're being cheated completely.
It's like 50. Yeah, but you know what? In the first week, they dropped 2 episodes. So I was like, oh, cool, 2 episodes a week. I will survive.
No.
Then,
that was a trap.
Oh, it's such a trick.
Oh, it was so bad. So, but because...
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. It totally worked. But having learned to like Park Seo-joon and sort of understand his rhythm in Friendcation, when I watch him in Youth Empty, there hasn't been much of direct Park Seo-joon, interaction over here. He's mostly been very quiet. But that makes total sense to me. I would do what Park Seo-joon is doing, which is in a large group, I would go very quiet. I'm not, maybe just keep the camera off.
Especially as like, one of the oldest as well. So it's kind of like, you're just like, let the kids
what
do
is
their
hilarious? Thing. Park Seo-joon is my age. He was born in 1988. But I look at him and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a man. Like he's lived his life. He's an Ajashi. And I'm like, shoot, this guy is my age. What?
I suddenly realized when I was watching episode 4, that actually Ji Chang-wook is the eldest, not him, because I remembered, he's my sister's age.
But
and I remembered Park Seo-joon is an 88. Yeah, he does.
Because Ji Chang-wook has this like very cute and naive, earnest energy that just makes him seem younger.
Oh my god.
I do want to talk about this aspect of Ji Chang-wook because like I'm watching If You Wish Upon Me right now, and I think like his roles that really grab me and that I really enjoy, as opposed to the roles of his that I really can't get on board with, are the ones that like that earnestness and sort of like, I don't even want to say naivete, but like this kind of openness and like sweetness that he has in real life. Yeah. The roles where he kind of like allows that to shine through as part of his character. Like the first time I ever saw him in that family drama, I think, was it Sons of Soul Pharmacy House or Smile You? I can't remember, but he plays like that youngest child of the house who's suddenly saddled with a baby that his best friend had in high school, and he's like 19 or something. And that kind of like cute young energy that he had, like he hasn't really lost it. Yeah. And it's really interesting to see that like that's his real personality. And I feel like I've seen him in another variety show too, but I feel like that authentic who he is, when that comes out in some part of his role, and I think it is coming out in If You Wish Upon Me too, because even though he has like a very dark past, there's like a real earnestness and kind of like this disbelieving innocence almost to one part of his character that really shines through. And I think like those roles are the ones where he is the most engaging for me as a viewer. Whereas the ones where he's trying to be like really slick and really like
a smooth guy,
cynical and smooth. Yeah, I'm just like, this isn't you. Like it doesn't work for me personally. Maybe others have a different experience.
No, I agree with you. Ji Chang-wook is a very attractive actor and he can absolutely act. That's not what is under contest here. But I tend to find that he, for instance, Sound of Magic. I don't think either of you have watched that, right?
I watched about half of one episode. That was
right. It takes a minute to sort of grasp what his character is trying to do, but I think it was a really good choice for Ji Chang-wook. Regardless of how the story works or doesn't work for me, what you have to love is that wonder at like the world and the possibility of magic and just believing in the unbelievable. That entire persona really fits someone like Ji Chang-wook because they can really use his earnestness, his wide-eyed wonder. Something that he does in Youth MT at one point is where they are doing that, the thing where they emphasize different syllables of a word and you have to repeatedly move the emphasis by syllable. And pitch game. Every time he hits the pitch, his head bobs up. It's like this whole beaver thing. I watched that so many times on repeat. That was hilarious.
So funny.
And just yeah.
I think like in the roles where he's allowed to be a bit awkward. Like I think that was the problem with Suspicious Partner too, right? Where like his character was supposed to be so perfect.
Or Melting Me Softly. They both needed him to be like the slick, conventional hero, and that just wasn't. It wasn't like his roles were not very well written to begin with. Plus, it just wasn't using his strengths. However, Love Struck in the City, I know that's not like a very popular drama, but his character really worked for Ji Chang-wook. Like that whole lost in his own head slightly, but also earnestly trying to do the right thing character, that fit him pretty well. Yeah. So it's a matter of him finding the right role. I have to admit that I was guilty of saying at one point that he really just needs to do action roles because the only thing I genuinely enjoyed of his was Healer. And I admit I was wrong. He needs these emotionally vulnerable roles because clearly that is where his strength lies, not K2 and whatever else he's done. Yeah.
But the thing is, Healer was both of those. It was an action role. And perhaps what you're then saying is that you had confused the thing that appealed, well, not necessarily you had confused, but perhaps the thing you thought appealed to you about him was... Right. Yeah. However, I will say that I don't think that he's bad in the slick roles. I don't find him bad in them. What I find bad about those roles...
It's like trying to force him to do something. He's a good actor, so he can do them. But it doesn't use what is special about this actor's strengths.
And it never transcends to that level of like a performance that really stays with you for a long time. It's just very competently done, and he does a good job, and he's very handsome, but it doesn't stick with you, at least... for me.
But I don't lay the problem of those roles at his door. I lay that at the door of the actual drama.
Yeah, I don't think that we're laying them at his door.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm just explaining why I don't hate him in those roles.
You're right. None of us hate him in these characters. And the problems were definitely with the writing and the directing and not his performance. But for instance, like Park Seo-joon in What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, his character wasn't exactly exceptionally written. It was a pretty bland male lead character. It's Park Seo-joon's performance that just really elevated this generic male lead. It played into his strengths, like his ability to be super weird in a character, like the way he does his facial expressions. He made that character better than it was written.
Right. And and some of that is also like, the director probably gave him that room. Absolutely. Because a lot of times they won't be given that room. They're told to act in a certain way and not outside of that.
Correct. And a lot of people will disagree with me, but in Business Proposal, when you had, what is the actor's name?
Ahn Hyo-seop.
When you had Ahn Hyo-seop given a very similar role, and he's a very attractive actor that I'm pretty sure a lot of people really loved him in that role, but he couldn't do what Park Seo-joon did in What's Wrong with Secretary Kim. Yeah. Even though the characters were comparable and their lines and the comedic effect that each of them had were also comparable. I don't think that character, even though it like visually fit Ahn Hyo-seop, played into Ahn Hyo-seop's strengths. We know what Ahn Hyo-seop's strengths are. He's already done it in 30-17.
Yeah.
So it really, like, there are certain types of roles that really utilize an actor's best properties. And I think Ji Chang-wook just wasn't being able to find those. He is a theater actor. And you can kind of see that in like the more dramatic moments in all of the dramas he's done. But if you try to put him in an established, like stereotypical box, like a male lead box, he just doesn't quite...
I still think he would excel in an action role, but an action role that has a very emotional side, because those are his strengths, emoting and like his physical presence.
Yeah, he does have a
'Cause-
very good physical presence as well.
Yeah, because the thing with An Hyo-sop isn't that he doesn't have this. I mean, it is that he doesn't have the same acting ability, but it's also that he hasn't developed the kind of screen presence that Park Seo-joon has. And, you know, the whole time I was watching Business Proposal, I basically, like, my brain was just telling me that was Park Seo-joon because of how he was styled. I kept forgetting it was An Hyo-sop.
You and everybody on Twitter and Instagram.
The little flap of hair on his forehead.
Right. Until you hit those walls.
Yeah.
I mean that was like a deliberate styling, I'm sure. But having a lead role doesn't mean you have lead presence. And I think there's people, many actors who prove that. People like An Hyo-sop, people like, what's the other one? I can't even remember their names at this point because in my head they're all grouped in this one An Hyo-sop group, which is, I put Nam Joo-hyuk in there as well.
I would have said that until I watched 25-21, which I feel like he had a lot of presence in that one. I actually
then he's
impressed
developed
me
it.
in 25-21.
Okay.
I was like a Nam Joo-hyuk denier. Like I did not see the appeal with him, but I am completely won over with his performance of that. So
So he's developed the thing.
yeah, he's developed it.
Yeah. But I also still would argue that he has been pushed into lead roles before he was ready for them, and when there were better actors who could have taken those roles.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily also like something that depends on age, because if you look at somebody like Lee Do-hyun, he's always had it. You know what I mean?
He has. Even if you go back to 30 but 17, you can see it.
Right.
It's so
he's magnetic
interesting.
immediately
Agreed.
the first time you see him. But to get back to Youth MT.
Finally.
Yes, let's get back to Youth MT because I want to talk about the other people.
Yes,
You know who I
let's.
want to talk about.
Oh. Another late discovery for everybody is...
Hwang In-yup?
I think it needs to, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, since we're on the topic of 18 again. Yeah, Hwang In-yup is, I love him. Do I need to say anything else?
No.
Sorry, I will be coherent.
Nah, let's end the episode now. That's it.
Well, speaking of like the whole sort of dichotomy between like seeing somebody on screen and then seeing their quote unquote real personality, let's just call it their variety persona, because let's be real, these are also still performances. But like seeing that dichotomy of him, you know, so I first saw him in 18 again, and I remember around that time when I was really enjoying him, I watched, I think it was also like I had started True Beauty, but then there was this interview that I watched with him where he's just like this very squishy, kind of timid, like very sweet, like he's being interviewed, but he's like almost apologetic to be there and like taking up your time, kind of, you know, like just this persona that is so, I'm sure it's probably close to his personality, but I was just like you, and then like this like tough guy that you know, like this with this hard outer shell in 18 again. And he still has the same charisma, which is so interesting. Like sometimes people in their like acting roles have a lot of charisma, and then you see them in interviews or like in variety shows, and they just have like a really different presence on screen, and a different energy. And he has a different energy, but he's still just as magnetic and charismatic, which I find fascinating. And so you see him here on Youth MT, right? He's kind of timid. He's like, he feels nervous. Like you can tell it's like his first variety performance. He's like watched all of these other shows in preparation, and he's expecting it to be like really hardcore. And like, you know, you can tell he's been watching like One Night in 2 Days. Cause like there's one point where they're like, we're going to do a transition. He's like, should I jump? And they were like, no. And they're like, what do you think this is? Like the early 2000s. It's so funny.
But what's funnier is that the other cast members, the younger ones from Sound of Magic, they're like, what have you been watching? They don't get it.
They don't get it.
And it's worth pointing out here that he's like, what, 32 now, I
31.
think? So what he's grown up watching is totally different to these new kids. He is a generation apart from them. And this comes out so hilariously in Youth MT because they're just like, you know, when they're setting their group, when they're naming their teams, and like Kim Yoo-jung is like, we're the real youth here. So they like name their team the real Chungcheon. And then you have like the, you know, the older ones who are sitting there going, we're old, look at these kids. And it's just so funny.
I hadn't even thought about that. He's kind of caught in the middle, right? Between the 22,
Yeah.
24
The thing-
somethings and like the late 30s.
The thing with Hwang In-yup, the thing with Hwang In-yup is that he looks as young as those kids in their 20s, right? Like the early 20s.
And he
acts those roles.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
But really, he's much older, and he's much more. He is almost like he doesn't quite feel like he belongs, but he's trying
also
really hard.
Also because he's come to fame very late.
Yes.
He's come to this like celebrity existence at this point in his life, rather than, you know, the kids who have been doing it for ages or the ones who are starting much earlier. So like I just find those dynamics so interesting. And the other thing, like you know what you were mentioning, Anissa, about roles. Also in Youth MT, you know, you have Kyung-soo, who is from the Itaewon class.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this part in episode 4 where they're like, you know, having their Hanok experience, and they're all drinking tea, and he is just overwhelmed by embarrassment when everyone is looking at him, and the others are saying to him, "But you act," and he's like, "But I'm playing a role now. I'm being myself, and this is harder."
Oh.
And it's just,
I totally
it's so interesting
that.
and funny.
And because the more he said, like, don't look at me, everybody would turn to
the
look
more
at
they looked at him. And then he was just getting redder and redder. And this is like, for example, in the like BTS in general, but like Jin in particular, he has this thing where he just, when people are looking at him, he gets really embarrassed and his ears go red, which is kind of at odds with this whole brash, I'm worldwide handsome persona that he often uses in sort of specific sort of interview situations and all of that. But like, yeah, this whole, the introverts uniting in these shows or in these sort of creative working groups, you're just like, that's a lot of introversion in one room. And
I also thought it was so funny how they were all in their separate cars and they all start talking about their MBTI classifications and how most of them are introverts. But then like, who was extroverted? I can't remember now, but most of them were introverts. And then even was it Ji Chang-wook? He said he's like, I'm an introvert, but I'm like very social.
The other thing that stood out to me, this is again, I'm going back to Ji Chang-wook for a second. I think this was in the initial meetings when they were driving to the spot where the MT happens, and one of the female actors, they were basically, I think it was Nara, who was basically saying that is it true for somebody else? Like, she was asking other people who have worked with Ji Chang-wook that what she experienced was that his friendliness could sometimes be slightly burdensome, and then Ji Chang-wook's face completely fell.
Oh, he was so sad.
Not only his friendliness, but like the way he like takes care of everyone and is so nice to his
Not his friendliness, but like how polite he is in like he's actively trying to be kind. Kindness was the word she had used, actually, I think. And everybody else went completely silent. But I kind of understood what she was saying, even though that conversation was quickly hushed up. What I extrapolated from that exchange was that Ji Chang-wook is one of those people who actively goes about trying to make sure that everybody around him is comfortable and like
is included. Yeah.
And those people are awesome, honestly. I don't know where they have the energy, but you could really see that.
I was about to say that's what I do, and then I was like,
know,
okay,
that's
say
what
it now.
you do.
Because you're just like, you understand more than anybody as a particular kind of introvert how awkward it is for everyone and how awkward you feel. And you're willing to be the sort of slightly embarrassing person if needed to make sure everyone else is comfortable. And like, I've lived my life doing that. And it's like, I watch this show and I'm like, I get you. Like, I completely understand. You never want there to be a person in the corner that someone's ignoring because you know what it's like to be that person. So you want to be that person who makes sure that every single person is included and counted and that nobody is upset and that nobody is left out and that, so like that Ji Chang-wook energy, like I really like get it. But then I also get the Park Seo-joon energy, which is like, I'm really nervous. Everyone here is younger than me almost. And these are kids and they're cool and I can't deal with it. I'm just going to pretend I don't exist. I'll just hang with the people who know me and like hide behind them if needed,
Yeah.
So like I get it a lot. So I think a lot of my enjoyment is coming from relating to the way that they're interacting with each other, because it's just so relatable. And then you have like Park Bo-gum, who is like going around everybody with his little paws, going just like speak Panmal with me, and Hyung Hyung, and would you like a snack? And just everybody is just
the force of Park Bo-gum's personality is like nothing I've ever seen. Like the first time I saw like the magic that he creates wherever he goes, like he's literally like one of those magical fairies that like spreads light and happiness. And I'm like, how are you real? But the first time I saw it was like when he came to One Night and 2 Days, and so one of the person who's been with the show for the longest, Jungmin, I think it's like from season 1, he's the only one that's still left from season 1, and he is like known on the show for being afraid of heights. And one of the things that they were doing, I think, was like parasailing or paragliding, and he was like there's no way, I'm not doing it. Park Bo-gum somehow, with the force of his like adorable personality,
hold your hand.
got him to do it. Yeah, and I was just like, I would never have imagined that he would actually do that. But like like the way that he just like unabashedly embraces people, and like I don't know if this is. I don't think that it's fake. I think it's actually his real personality.
Yeah, it's 100% real.
No way.
Yeah.
There's no way that's fake.
No one can be that nice.
No, it's
like
not
that
even
all the time
niceness.
and fake it.
If a person didn't already have that personality, it's impossible to fake it, because you just would not know how to constantly be that. Everybody has ups and downs. This boy never has a down.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a constant, like he's constantly he's like buzzing around. He's just full of energy.
Do you find it hilarious when like Ji-chang keeps on going, he just came out of army?
I know. It's like, he's extra excited because
boy has too much energy.
Because he came out of the no. I don't think that's the case. Though. I think that's just him. Oh my god.
I'm also kind of surprised. Like I didn't expect like Park Bo-gum to be such an adventurous person. Like I know him for his dramas, not for like real life. So he's up for anything.
Yeah,
oh my
he is.
god, yeah. And
Yeah,
he just flew in from a holiday in Paris. I mean,
Yeah.
I would be wiped out.
It was Fashion Week, I think.
He was working in Paris.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not even a holiday.
They don't have holidays.
What are vacations?
Exactly.
You gotta go on a variety show to have a vacation.
Oh my god.
And even then, you can't be sure.
And even on the first
like how
day,
they were afraid all night that they were going to sleep in the tents.
Poor kids. But like Park
so
Bo-gum
glad.
didn't actually get a proper meal for most of the day. And he was
bless him.
He was surviving on
But you know-
nuts and like offering nuts to random people on the set.
No. You know the watermelon, this is again like what Anissa was saying about variety editing, is the way that they just kept zooming in on him and his like how many pieces of watermelon he went through. It's like the boy was hungry and he was just like quietly gnawing away at them, and each time the gnawing was getting more intense. So you're like
Great.
yeah, the magic really is in the editing. Even no, I mean the magic is both in that chemistry and in the editing. So yeah. And like Nara is so nice.
yeah.
I
love her.
had no
Oh my
idea.
God, I
love her.
So lovely.
And she's also one of those people.
And her little girl crush on Lee Ju-young, I just love it. She's like, I'm gonna do this with Ju-young.
And she's also
She's so
another
great.
caretaker personality. Like she's going around like making
Yeah.
sure the shoes are tied. Like she was tying someone's shoes. She's just always checking in on people. It's
Or like when they were eating and Juyeon gets like food all over her face, so her makeup comes off, and then she's like quietly being like, "Do you have any foundation?" She's like, "Okay, like I'll help you later." She's like fixing it up for her. Such a mom.
Yeah. And like Kwak Dong-yeon, he's
Oh my
just
god, Kwak Dong-yeon is hilarious. He just has to
Yeah.
talk. Like it doesn't matter what he says. Everything he says is funny.
I didn't realize how much of his personality comes across in the characters he plays. Like some of the characters
like
he
that
plays.
chaotic element, right?
Correct.
Like his actual personality
Yes,
is hilariously chaotic.
I
It's
just
so good.
assumed that it was something he was putting on for his characters. No, oh my god, he tamps it down for his characters. Like it's suppressed.
Like his Moonlight character, right? The bodyguard, this like stoic,
That is
non-talking
like
guy,
the opposite
versus
of him.
his Vincenzo character. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if
Crazy.
anything, the closest that I have seen him play to his like real life character is probably the My ID is Gangnam Beauty character, where he plays this like second lead role, and he is slightly that chaotic but also very clever. But again, nothing compared to his real life persona.
There's this role that he played really early on. I don't know if it was his debut role, but like he plays like a student in a family drama. I think this was My Husband Got a Family, maybe, but he's like one of the nephews in the family who's like the joke is that like he's so dumb. So one of the characters is tutoring him and he's just like a wall, like nothing gets through to him, and like he's very intelligent in real life, so obviously like that's not like him, but you could see how like I was a comedic character and he was so funny, and like you could just see in his eyes how much he was enjoying like these humorous lines. Like I'm not really expressing it because I feel like you have to like watch it to understand, but he was so good in that. I was like, who is this kid? He is so funny.
I do love it when you suddenly discover like an actor is like an amazing comedic actor. Like, for example, Yusungo, I'm sorry, I have to invoke him at least once. Just like discovering his comedy chops was like one of the most enjoyable things I've ever experienced in Dramaland. Because especially when you've had a long career of like being this very dramatic, heavy emotion kind of actor who can like cry to like the end of the world and like make everyone else cry too. And then to see this kid just like blow the roof off with his just general hilarity. I mean, I'm Not a Robot is one of the funniest dramas that I've ever watched. Speaking of I'm Not a Robot, Chesubin as well.
Yeah.
I just, she has such a hilarious, like, she's the naysayer of the group. And again, I relate to that. She's always like, can't we do it like this though? But how about that? But what about this? Yeah, that's me. That's like very me energy. But she's so cute about it, and you're just like, oh, I love you.
She
I
is
love
so
Chesubin
cute.
so much.
Her general personality
I
is
adore
utterly
her.
adorable. No, but one of my favorite moments in Youth Empty, is when I think it's Kim Bo-yoon, one of the younger cast members from Sound of Magic, and I think it was Kim Yoo-jung came to her, like it was just happening in the background. And Kim Yoo-jung approached her and was like, do you remember me? And Kim Bo-yoon was like, how do you remember me? And
Do I?
and Kim Yoo-jung had, like, as a young, I think she was 13-ish or something, and she had directed a short film or a drama, and a baby Kim Bo-yoon had been the actor. And like that moment of bonding, and later on she's recollecting, like Kim Bo-yoon is recollecting it for Ji Hye-won, who was her cast member from Sound of Magic, and she's like, she remembered me, she came to me and she loved me. Oh, that was so cute. Oh my god.
Yeah, it was really interesting to me to like see also, because some of these groups like because I want to talk about the concept a little bit, right? So you have these like this one director who directed all three of these dramas, Love of the Moonlight, Sound of Magic, yes, and Itaewon Class. And so he basically like reached out to these groups, like these casts, and was like, do you want to do this Youth MT? And you see in the beginning, they were like, wow, like so many people. He's like, yeah, I didn't think you'd all say yes. But they were all just like, yeah, like we want to come back. So clearly like they had a good experience with him as the director.
Yeah.
Otherwise they wouldn't have come back. But it's just really interesting because they're all kind of, I mean, yes, there is some large gaps of age and experience, but in general, they're, kind of around the same age. There are some who are younger, but then they have more experience.
Kim
and then there's
Yoo-jung.
some who are older and have less. Yeah, like Kim Yoo-jung is probably like the day somebody here. Like she's been acting
Yeah, exactly.
for such a long time. And to see the dynamics, not only between like the cast members of the same shows, but then like some of them have worked in other shows together. Like Ji Chang-wook and Nara are close because they worked on Suspicious Partner together. And you can tell they have like a close friendship that's continued since that drama. And so,
him and Kyung-soo as well in a different drama.
yes. So that was interesting to me because like, I don't know, was it Borma, you were mentioning how like you were interested to see how there wasn't like that much of a hierarchy between them.
Yes, that was my favorite thing about Youth MT. I expected, because of how the interviews usually work, like when they're promoting a drama, cast interviews happen. There is always like a hierarchy between younger, less experienced cast members and like the more veteran / older cast members. Like you can see that there is the respect flowing upwards, and there is like the use of Jondemal and just like how polite they are in their interactions. But also, you can also see that in behind the scenes footage, right? Like, because when the cast members are working together, the more experienced ones tend to be more confident around the set. But here, like from very beginning, it's like that somehow that boundary was broken. Like they approached each other as not friends exactly, but colleagues.
But colleagues.
Yeah. And also like there is still like that age, like respect towards like older members thing, but it's not like a built-in hierarchy of, oh, you have a higher status in the industry than me. That status thing was completely non-existent. You have the youngest cast member of Sound of Magic. Just
what an opportunity for them
oh
though
my
to
God,
be
like
here.
think about,
Can you imagine?
talk about like striking gold.
Yeah.
Them being completely like them being open and friendly and very comfortable with like the veteran cast members they were with. Ji Chang-ok, again, like the most experienced in that cast, of course, and they treated him like just like the slightly older, like this young uncle, maybe
Slightly clueless.
slightly clueless, yes. And it's so comforting to watch that dynamic because it was completely unexpected. And the same thing with Itaewon Class. Like for instance, an actor like Lee Jae-young, for instance, who has had a lot less exposure in front of the public compared to even Nara, say, Lee Jae-young does not act like she has like a less celebrity than the rest of the cast. They all act like they are equals in that space. And that's so fantastic. But,
I think we should be clear here that I think Kim Yoo-jung probably is the most experienced actor here. She's been doing it for like 18 years, since 2004. So she's probably the most sunbae among them. I also found that like her like sort of professional exterior never quite goes away. And that obviously is a result of all of that time in the industry. So she's the one I think who we've seen the least sort of
open.
I don't want to use any of those words.
She's like facilitating a lot of things. Like she's a connector. She's like helping. Yeah. She's so experienced in like how TV works that you can see almost unconsciously she just like jumps in to like smooth things along or make things work better, or like she's such a professional
without giving a lot of her inner self away at the same time.
Yeah, because she's had to protect herself from such a young age. I agree that there's a very like informal kind of atmosphere from the beginning, and I think that's partly just because like you come with these pre-made groups of people who already know each other so well from like doing a drama together that even though they're awkward with each other, there's an ability to like drop some of their initial guardedness, which is nice. But I think also like in terms of like we talked about the very structured variety shows versus the more unstructured ones. And if you like look at them, you'll notice that a lot of times the unstructured ones, they do them with groups of people who already know each other really well. Like another one I wanted to bring up was Dragon Club, which is this show from 2017 where you have this group of like longtime friends. It's Jang Hyuk, Cha Tae-hyun, Hong Kang-in, Kim Jong-kook, and Hong Kyung-min. And if you know these people, like
it's subtitled Immature Bromance.
Yes, and they are like in the industry. They're one of those like extremely well-known friend groups. They have known each other for such a long time, since they were like young kids in the industry. And so they have a very similar, even though it is like one of those things where like they go and they like open a little pojangmacha on the beach and people can come and buy stuff, but it has a very similar vibe to like In the Soup, where it's just like a group of friends who haven't been able to get a chance to just hang out together. And with them, it's like even longer because they are, they have families, they have very busy careers, they have kids, like they don't get a chance to just like hang out again as a group of guys. And so like it has that energy, but like with these really structured shows, which Youth MT is very structured, it's not as harsh on the cast as a group like One Night and 2 Days. And I keep going back to One Night and 2 Days just because it is one of those like really long running, very popular, very influential shows. It's been going now it's had 709 episodes.
Wow.
So it's extremely long running, like multiple seasons. The first episode was in 2007. So these kinds of really structured shows where they are forcing them into these like very uncomfortable situations where like, they'll have to do these horrible games where like if you lose, you have to sleep outside. And it's not just like sleeping outside. It's sleeping outside sometimes like on the side of a mountain in like -10 temperatures with the wind blowing and the snow's coming. Like it's very harsh. So that's why I was saying like this is a very like gentle and kind version. Like here they were threatened by the image of the tents. but they didn't actually have to sleep outside. I mean, it wasn't like it was that cold anyway. So it's not like they would, One Night and 2 Days is known for like forcing people to like dip themselves into the, cold ocean in January, things like that. Sleeping alone on an abandoned island. And I think like the reason that they do that is to break down those barriers between people who like don't know each other and might have these, like they had Jo and Sung on one time. And they were all like, oh my God, Jo and Sung. And then by like 3 hours in, everyone's like joking around like old friends because immediately they have to do these like really embarrassing challenges. And everyone just like drops all of that hierarchy and like sambaehube, unless it's someone who's like a legend in the industry. And then they probably wouldn't even invite them on that kind of show where they would have to do that kind of thing.
Humiliate them, right?
Yeah.
So I looked up Dragon's Club while you were saying all of that. And this is clearly the original Friendcation.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up because it really, like, as I was watching it, I was thinking about that show. So I recommend it. It's a fun show.
Also, there's this one comment in the KBS World YouTube, like where the first episode is. The first comment says, only veterans get to do a variety show that helps them get a vacation, doing anything they wanted to do while working.
Yep.
Oh, I really wish we would, like, I hope we'll get more of these in the coming, like, few years and stuff. It's just, they're really nice.
Yeah.
And I think they have a lot of entertainment value as well. So.
Yes.
Agreed.
So any
Pick the right people.
Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh, do we have to wrap up?
I know. I don't want to wrap up, but we've been talking for more than 2 hours at this point, so probably we should wrap up.
One of the things I wanted to ask you guys about, this is like a recurring conversation that we have, Borama and I have definitely had this conversation several times in the last like 10 years or something, about how we don't necessarily want to know about our faves in real life. Like, we don't want to know what they are like in private.
Yeah.
We don't want to know what their real personalities are like. But sometimes we do. Like, what do you think about that now?
But you know what I really don't want is to meet them in person, because that completely strips off any distance between you and the celebrity you're admiring from a distance. Because even in variety shows, like at one point in Youth Empty, they were talking about something and one of them says, is that allowed? Can we say that? And it was, like that they have a certain amount of restraint even while they are in this space that's informal and they're trying to be casual and establish relationships.
In the beginning, when they have that first meeting, at the beginning of In the Soup, when like they first talk about like the plans and everything, and then one of them, I can't remember which one it was, but he was like, I'm gonna have to think about what I'm gonna share and what I'm not gonna share.
Yeah.
So it gives you that. I mean, I think that's also what I love, right, about Korean variety shows is they're not pretending that they aren't, that there isn't some element of superficiality and producedness about what they're doing. And yet somehow it makes you trust them more in a way,
Correct.
which is it's really smart, because then you're like, okay, you're not pretending that this is real. And so I can trust that what you do choose to share about yourself is authentic. Whether it is or it isn't, I mean, sometimes we find out very shockingly that it's completely fake, as we've had, as has happened in the past. But
absolutely, that is always a possibility. But again, I choose to believe that this is one aspect of them, because humans tend to have different aspects, and also we are different people with different groups of people. Like the person I am with you guys, I'm not the same person with my other friend groups. I know that. Like the things we talk about, the way I approach conversations is wholly different with another set of friends. So what I'm choosing to share when I am, let's say we do a reality program together, would be very different.
Aren't we already? What is this?
I was going to say, like, even on the podcast, we've had conversations before where we're like, do I want to talk about this on, on a published medium that's available to the public is going to be around forever?
We frequently have that conversation.
It's not like we are censoring ourselves, like, it's not an oppressive censorship. And it's also not that we are displaying a fake version of ourselves. This is us. This is real us. There are aspects of us that we choose not to bring to this platform. And the same thing with variety shows. I think those are the actors. Like, as I trust that as much as I trust the average person on the street or my friends or my family, what they choose to show me is the real them. It may not be.
Yeah.
But So yeah, this doesn't break that distance that I have from the celebrity, but it also gives me a deeper understanding of them and just lets me like them more. Like
Right.
lets me enjoy their existence more.
The thing that I'm sometimes afraid of, oh no, actually not sometimes, I'm always afraid of this. And maybe this isn't a conversation I've had with you, maybe it's a conversation I've had with my sister. That at a point, like when you're really interested in someone and you go and look for everything they've done, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like an actor, it can be a writer, it can be anybody, it can be in any field. At some point, you're afraid, or you hit that wall where something disappoints you and you're like, I should have stopped sooner. And then I wouldn't have had to know this thing that I now know that kind of I don't really like it. And like that's very personal.
Yeah.
I agree that I have that too. And I don't actually do that anymore. I think I used to, especially with authors whose works I really like. That was my original, they were my original biases.
Yeah.
Authors I really liked started to feel like my own voice. And I wanted to know everything about their life. And pretty soon that meant I would run into things that I really didn't want to know about them. I realized early on that I just cannot do that and continue to enjoy their work. And I don't think I've ever, like, I have had opportunities where I have been invited into spaces where I could meet people I really admire on television, on movies, in movies. And I have refused because I really didn't want that distance to go away. And I haven't felt the loss.
I don't know how you found the will to refuse.
It wasn't
I think
hard.
I wouldn't be able to do that. I would want to go
I wouldn't
and see them.
either.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the value I get from having them on screen is more than any value I could get from like meeting them in person. Like a fleeting conversation with a celebrity that I admire for like a few minutes is not going to be very deep. It may, on the other hand, like an offhanded remark or a sort of like an unintentional slight on their part might break my heart completely. And I just do not want that. And I've seen that happen over and over again.
That's very true. Yeah. There's a reason they say don't meet your heroes. I think for me, like, I don't know that I would ever have the opportunity to meet any of these people, but like, I think leaving that aside, like in terms of, you know, how much you want to know about the person, I think like I'm happy to see what they're willing to show me. So whether that's, you know, an interview that they gave or a like a variety show appearance or, you know, something like that, I'm cool with that. I like enjoy that if it's somebody whose work I really enjoy, or if I find somebody like really charismatic and interesting and I just like likable, you know, then I will seek out their interviews or, you know, other things that they've done. But I don't want to know, you know, what Dispatch dug up about them. I don't want to know,
agreed.
you know, gossip that the internet is creating about them. I don't want to know like people's invasion of their private lives and how they've like dug up all this information. Like, I don't want to know that. And I think for me, that's the line. Is like if they put it out willingly and, you know, they got paid for it, I'm good. And I don't think that it's fake. Like, I agree with you, Porma. Like, I don't think it's fake. I think it's an aspect of themselves that they decide to show. But I don't really want to know more than what they want to show the world.
Yeah.
And if that means that, like, I'm not going to know about that somebody is a rapist until it comes out, well, you know, that's just life. You don't know about people in your life either until it actually gets exposed. And there's no way to know things like that until you know it.
Yeah.
You know what's heartening about, for example, watching something like the In the Soup, whether that's the BTS or the Friendcation spin-off, is that you can see that they are still setting boundaries. And I think it's also in Youth MT that for example, there's this very fleeting scene in one of the Friendcation episodes, can't remember which one, but the boys are going into the bathroom and they've thrown like a hat over the camera and they take it off when they're finished. And I just thought it was just like, it wasn't even a second. It just flashed by, but I noticed it. And you just seeing that they still retain the ability to actually override this setup and make their own decisions about what they don't want to show. Like I'm sure they could have been assured that wasn't going to make it into the cut, but they're still looking after themselves. And like, for example, you know, the UQuiz interview that you guys just watched, the one with Jin and Sugar, I don't know if you noticed that Jin didn't have a lot of talking in that. And that was actually an issue. Like, people asked afterwards, why is there so little Jin? Why didn't you let him talk? And it turns out that he actually had said things that he thought were very sort of heavy and depressing, and he asked them to cut that all out. So, like, you can have, that boundary setting, you can have compassionate editing, but all of that depends on having a good faith relationship with people as well, like the production crew.
And at one point, I think it was Sugar who said, which is Yoongi, who said that one of the things that he finds worrisome about other like younger generations of idols is like all the variety and the promotion that they have to do and how little say they have in these situations. Like, they have to do it. It's rounds of going and doing these free promo events over and over again. And they have very little say in how they are edited and produced. And we know that BTS has a lot of control over it. Their company has specifically
They've created their own machinery. Yeah.
Pretty much. Like, they have run BTS, Bon Voyage. They have Burn the Stage. Basically, they have all of these productions that are created so that BTS could keep getting the exposure, keep giving this content out to the public.
And they're unique in that sense from other idols.
Yeah, exactly. But whereas with they don't get exploited by the variety machinery as they were being until a few years back, when they were like, we are done. We are not doing this anymore. And happily, they could ascend to that level and their company could support them in this. And the machinery that they have created is now helping other bands, like bands that work with, or other artists who work with that company are now being slowly, given opportunities to be part of these projects. It's becoming another thing, like another variety company by itself, I know. But I'm just talking about specifically this particular group. This is a privilege that they have.
Yeah, I agree. It's a function of their power as the biggest group in the world. And a lot of people, even if they wanted to set those boundaries, they wouldn't be allowed to.
However, I like that in Youth MT, you can kind of see that the editing is done from a pretty sympathetic point of view. Like, the production.
A director they trust, right?
It
is a director they trust. Yeah.
So you can see the comfort of the cast even when they're not comfortable with each other because they're meeting each other either for the first time or after years, and they actually in real life, these actors have, like, actors from these different dramas, they may have worked with each other, some of them, but they don't really socialize, so it's awkward. But the crew is doing a good job of like helping them come together. So I'm really enjoying that.
And I think the other thing is, like, even if it's socially awkward, there are enough of the cast members who have been variety veterans that they can kind of not save the other ones, but kind of guide things to go in a direction where, like, the other younger cast members or the cast members who are like don't have experience with variety aren't gonna like fall on their faces.
Yeah.
Especially like Kim Yoo-jung is amazing at this. Ji Chang-wook also, like, they're kind of pushing things gently in certain directions to make sure that like the other cast members feel comfortable, or like if somebody says something, they'll like add something clarifying to make sure that they don't look bad. So, and I mean, obviously you can undo that in editing, but as you said, the editing is also kind to them. So
yeah. Since we are about to wrap up now, favorite moments. One of mine is, that Hwang In-yeop has been a model first. Like, he wanted to be an actor, but he went into modeling. And then he had a lot of insecurities. Like, he's spoken about how he's shy and introverted, which I did not believe in his interviews. I didn't actually realize that when he said he was shy and introverted, he is shy and introverted.
He totally is, yeah.
And so he was scared about making that leap into acting. He was no longer sure. He was like, I'm doing well. It's like that character, the Park Bo-gum character in that
in Record of Youth,
where he's acted as he's been a model, but his actual dream is to be an actor. Then when he gets the acting opportunity, he's like, do I even have it in me? That's actually real life Hwang In-yeop. And you can see that him doing this, like this variety for the first time and being super nervous about it, comes out in like these rare, sincere moments, like like these video diaries that he suddenly starts doing, like these video letters to his fans.
Oh my god, the video letters are amazing. He's like, it's been good this whole time. Thank you. He's like leaving his will, before he goes ziplining. Oh my god, I was dying.
Dear
Everyone else
fans.
is like, what is he doing?
Also, late in the night, look at one point. So they're going to sleep. Ji Chang-hyuk and Hwang In-yeop are in the same room. And Hwang In, at late at night, Ji Chang-hyuk is like, so how was your day? How are you doing right now? And he's like, I'm so nervous still. This was my first time. And later on, like the next day, Ji Chang-hyuk was like, yeah, I went to sleep at like 3 or 4 in the morning. And in my head, I'm like, that's because you were like coaching him through to the middle of the night, weren't you?
He was counseling him all night. Oh my god.
Bless them. Before we sort of move into our close, I just wanted to, first I wanted to say that my original conception of this episode that we are recording was a general discussion on parasocial relationships because you don't go down the BTS hole without thinking about how invested you can get in a group of people, but to also realize that it's a lot of it is just like in your head, and what Anissa was saying at the very start about it being, illusory. Like you think you know people, but what do you really know? You know what they're showing you in a specific way. But to sort of come to the closing point, which Boromir you made about not wanting to meet the people that you admire the most in person. For me, whenever I have people I like, I call it like my sort of top level parasocial relationship is what I call an unrequited friendship. It's like, I am
Nice.
friends with you. You're not friends with me back because you don't know I exist. So when I'm having my fandom moments, I can't even really think of them as fandom moments because I'm sitting there imagining a one-sided friendship, like a jaksarang, but it's friendship. So I guess that's the note I want to close on for myself, is that these unrequited friendships are really difficult to emotionally sustain. I think it's time to have a break and watch some murder dramas.
That is the friendship that gives back in so many ways, right? Do you have a favorite
Yes.
moment? Do you want to talk about a favorite moment? Yes.
Of Youth MT.
Alrighty.
The whole thing is a one long favorite moment. I just
Yeah.
can't even. I was watching the first couple of episodes in the middle of the night, and this was after I had already begun sort of my BTS role, and my sisters knew that I had gone down the BTS hole. And the next day, my sister goes to me, "You were watching BTS videos all night, weren't you?" And I was like, Was I? I couldn't remember what it was. And she's like, I could hear you laughing at 4 o'clock. Why didn't you go to bed? And I was like, oh, it was Youth MT. It was, the ghosts. Just everything.
Yeah.
Everything was so, I was just howling through the entire episode. It was so funny.
I think, so you first recommended In the Soup, and then you started watching Youth MT, and you were like, you have to watch this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch both of these. And then when I finally got around to watching them, I think I watched In the Soup, 3 episodes of that first. And then I just binge watched Youth MT to whatever was available. And I think for me, In the Soup was really charming and really nice. Maybe I had inflated expectations because of how much you loved it. And maybe I would have enjoyed it more. It was good. I enjoyed it. But in Youth MT is it's kind of the type of variety that I've always enjoyed, but yet B, it's doing something different. And so because of that new kind of element, because I have watched shows with a group of close friends go on a vacation, and it's really lovely, and they cook together and they sleep together. It's nice. And I wasn't also as invested in all 5 of them. But in Youth MT, there's 15 people. I love pretty much all of them. I never expected I would get to see all of having 15 actors, most of whom are close
Top
to the top
tier.
of their game,
Yeah.
if not at the top of their career right now. Just you would maybe get 2 people or 3 people max in one of these shows. And I don't know how they convinced I guess it was the power of that personal relationship that the director had with them. But I was just this is an embarrassment of riches. When has this ever happened? And it's just joy, joy in every episode. But I have to say, my favorite thing was Hwang In-yeop going in the haunted house, because it's just unbeatable. Like just every moment, I was just like, "Oh dear boy, you are the funniest and the cutest."
Also, Ji Chang-wook going into the haunted heart because he wasn't actually scared at any point.
Yeah.
And like he was like, they're making so much effort. I should at least give a reaction. So he would be like,
That was funny.
That was
He would give like a very half-hearted
the
kind
mirror.
of. And then Park Seo-joon later on when they had like the leaders competition, he goes in, he's just like so calm. So chill. And that's why, like, I know, Saya, you were saying that he was nervous. I don't think he was nervous. I think he was just like kind of in his little shell. And so like what I think I really felt with Park Seo-joon, even though he's very different in both of the shows, is that like he has this really calm energy, which like I don't know why, but I didn't
Hyung
really
energy.
expect
It's Hyung
that
energy.
from him. Yeah. And so even when he's going through the haunted house, he's just like his chill self. And yeah, you know, like things are falling on my head, ghosts are popping out, whatever. Like, I'm here, do my mission, get the job done, I'm gonna get out of it. It was just so enjoyable. I was like, this guy is just, he's very capable.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we should end there. Otherwise, we'll
I
be here
think
for
we
the
should.
next 8 hours.
Also, people are talking about, in the comments under the MDL page, people are talking about how they have to have a second season. I don't know if it's possible. Like what the relationship PD Kim has with these actors, it almost seems like one of those things like the chemistry BTS has with amongst its members. It's one of those things that's like so damn rare, you don't know how to replicate it.
Yeah, it's kind of a miracle that this show even happened once. I don't know that they could make it happen again.
I think I'll be really happy to just rewatch this over and over again.
I definitely am rewatching it.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are finally done.
I think we've exhausted ourselves and our listeners at this point. So
Well, we've definitely exhausted ourselves.
where can people find us?
They can find us on Twitter at Dramas Overflow. They can find me at Not Now Saya.
They can find me at Anissa Khalifa _.
They can find me, Porva, at The Drama Notes. I changed my handle. They can also find us on our website, dramasoverflowers.net. And on Facebook, just look up Dramas Over Flowers.
And you can find us on Instagram at dramasoverflowers _. And you can email us at dramasoverflowers@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. The link is in the description.
Dramas Over Flowers is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening.
Bye everyone.